Good afternoon, everybody. I am really excited to be here. I'm Geoff Canada, founder of the Harlem Children's Zone, and I am just so excited to see so many of my friends here. My job is to really try and get us to think differently about the work that we're doing. So the line that got the biggest response in Waiting for Superman in that documentary was a line I said that when I was finishing up my master's degree at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, I thought, yeah, education is broken, but that's just because I haven't been let loose on the field. Literally, this is really what I thought. I'll have this whole thing fixed in 3 or 4 years, right? How hard could it be? So 40 years later, that's answered how hard it could be. And I think it's the challenge for all of us who have been working as hard as humanly possible to try to help the most disadvantaged folks who've never really had equal opportunity in this city. And we've done good work. We've certainly done good work at the Harlem Children's Zone. I've been associated. Robin Hood has supported us 30 years. As a board member, I'm really excited about the work that we've done. But here's the reality that we faced. When I started this work, New York City was literally in the poorest sections. It was falling apart. Folks have to remember the 80s and what was happening in these communities, because my childhood, the heroin epidemics that swept through the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens devastated our communities. So those of us who started this work, we started trying to repair what had happened over 20 years. Well, guess what? Right after that, you had the crack epidemic. I mean, we never got on our feet before this new thing came in and undermined all of the work that we were doing. So I know some of y'all are too young. You're like, well, I don't even know that period of time. I'm just trying to say why those of us who care about this work, why it's been so hard for us to actually solve these problems. Along with crack came the homicide crisis, and our kids were being slaughtered in the streets. That went on for 10 years. Then you had the financial collapse. Guess which communities were the hardest hit when that tragedy happened? So for those of us who've been working, if you say, look, you've been supporting folks for 30 years, why haven't they fixed this thing? Because there are big, powerful forces that keep knocking us on our rear ends. Every time we get some momentum going on, something happens that's huge and impacts the community we service. I think we have a different opportunity today. We've learned more about how we have to act individually, but I think there's a new movement out to act collectively in a way that traditionally is not the way I was trained. It's not the way a lot of folks were trained. But when we begin to see what's happening around and folks are thinking about this new concept of collective impact, can I leverage what I'm doing with other people who want to work with the same children, the same families, with the same sort of major goals? And can we combine our efforts in a way that makes my work more powerful, that makes your work more powerful? I think that's the future of our field. And why? Because in the end, we all want the same thing. We want to solve these problems. We don't want to keep trying to fix places that have been broken. We want to actually make sure that these places don't get broken in the first time. That involves thinking not just about children and families, but how do we think about systems? How do we think about actually getting some of these systems to work in different ways than they have been working? and for us to all be held accountable in a different way. It's not like I plan to stop doing what I'm doing and to suddenly say, okay, we need to abandon the work that all of us have been involved in. It is suggesting that we need to think about how we can partner with different organizations, with different agencies, with different entities, so that we can really have a much greater impact and we can deal with the scale. This stuff is big scale stuff, and we've got to come up with big scale ideas. So this next part of you're going to be involved with is really talking about how we come together in some really different ways. And I would just offer you one thing. Some of us who've been at this for 35, 40 years, and I see some of you in here, and I'm not going to call out names. Some of you are going to deny, yeah, I didn't know you back in '83, Geoff. That's okay. Here's the challenge. We did this because we were convinced we were going to fix it. We didn't do it just to try and not have things be so bad for folks. We wanted to solve these problems, and we haven't. And we're ready to think about this differently. But for some of us, time is not on our side. I can't wait another 10 years to get this thing done. We now know enough to actually do this the right way. And my challenge to you is, can't we all open up our thinking and our hearts to say, maybe there's a better way to tackle some of these problems and we can work differently. So I invite you to participate in this next part of our conference we're having here. And when you decide to act differently, please do it in a hurry. Time is not on my side, all right? All right, thank you all very much.